welcome back to another Backyard Professor chess video. I have heard your cries of woe and lamentation. We'll do chess on the big board. I like using this better also. And I will try to calm down a little bit on the humor, although I had funner than all get out making those videos. Yeah, this is about chess, not about me, so we'll have fun as we learn chess, that's for certain. Now, I'm one who likes looking through the lesser-known, older Grandmaster chess games. They are a gold mine of information. And chess today is played somewhat differently than chess was back then. This is a game that was played between two really good grandmasters, Tartakower and Duz Chotmersky. This was in the St. Petersburg tournament in 1909, and Emanuel Lasker is the one that put the tournament manual together to describe all the games, and he did a really good job on it. This game I really liked because it shows the outstanding coordination of the rooks and the bishops in an attack that is really spectacular. Today's grandmasters don't necessarily play chess the same way as they did, what was this, like 110 years ago or so, you know? But still, the combination of the rooks and the bishops, I mean, that'll happen 300 years from now in chess games. That won't ever change. And so that's what I want to show you today, is the tactics involved and the strategy of this attack and this game. It's really beautiful how they do this. Notice white has already bumped up to the outpost. Tartakower is the white, Duz Chotmersky is the black. He's already got this outpost because his knight is in the way of the pawn pushing to chase him off, right? And so we're in a very interesting challenge already up into the center. And now he goes knight f3 and d6. He's going to support the center. It is being challenged by the f-pawn. And then he also wants to challenge the center some more. And what he's going to do is, this shows that he's going to push the d-pawn. And so black bumps the a-pawn up, because he's going to push his bishop back so he doesn't get taken. So his opening is a little bit rough at this point. And when white does push the d4, of course, e is going to take the d, and then c is going to take the d, and now the bishop's going to have to bump back, which it does, to a7. So here's the opening so far. It looks like white is getting the best in the center, and it also appears that white has more space because of his pawn pushes, right? That makes a lot of sense. And he is getting his pieces out pretty cotton picking quick, but black is not far behind him at all either. Black is keeping right up with him. Another consideration was bishop g4 here instead of the knight move, but it's a matter of move order because he does get that bishop to g4 in here pretty quick. By developing this, though, from the outpost, white goes ahead and exchanges the knight at f6, and this brings out black's queen, which doesn't necessarily hurt him. Yeah, the queen's out somewhat early in the game, but she's doing good. But man, she's facing a phalanx of pawns in that center, isn't she? That is something else. And of course, he's going to push that e5 pawn very correctly. Yes, yeah. When you have that kind of a almost an unopposed center pawn mass, push it forward. Absolutely. Gain more space and push black back. That is good strategy. And of course, D is going to take the e5, and F is going to take the e5. And now we have the situation where the queen comes back to e7. Certainly. White is going to castle, which is nice. He will put the rook on a file here pretty quick. And now here's where he gets his bishop to g4 thrust, pinning that knight to the queen, and so therefore the knight can't be as supportive of these two pawns, which the knight here is hitting and the queen is hitting. So this is becoming a pretty good battle for the center at this point. And white continues, bringing up a bishop g5, hitting the queen directly. Now this is interesting because the queen comes to d7. Move the queen over. Black moved the queen over. And now white takes a moment to make sure that there's not going to be any surprise checks on his king. And the knight will proceed to take d4, trying to eliminate the powerful white center that he had built up. And now e6. He pushes the pawn one more time, and f takes e6. So we're going to have some open files here. It's going to be very interesting this way. Rook's going to come over to e1, claiming that file, of course. That makes perfect sense. And now black wants to eliminate some attackers, but he can see that the white's going to dominate with the files. It looks pretty sincerely serious that he's going to dominate the files. So he removes the knight, and that brings the queen into the game, very interestingly. And the bishop takes the queen, which is really interesting because black still has his queen. And now bishop takes e6. Now look at those white bishops. And look at the incredible discovered check that's going to be given to that king. Now, I ran this through my chess app. And the chess app said the queen should come to d4. Because he's got the bishop here. It's almost a direct hit. Although, you know, you've got the rooks here. But that's the place where the queen should have went. And I've gone through several variations. If you have apps or chess computers, from this position, go ahead and see what the computer tells you to do. Because this next move is stunning. It actually puts black ahead. It works. The queen took the bishop. And what this did is it gave him an extra piece, which is really crazy. He won the game because of this, but it gave him an extra piece. White is on a really serious looking attack, isn't he? Rook takes the queen, check. King comes up to f7. And now rook goes to e7, check. And king comes up to g6. And then he took the bishop. He took the black bishop. And then the king took the white bishop. And from here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You can see white's down a piece, and yet he's the one attacking. It's really interesting how black swapped those pieces so that he could be a piece ahead. But white just starts obliterating the black pawns. This really, really is a complete wipeout. Rook will take the c7 pawn, and black doesn't seem to know what the heck to do. He wants to get his rook involved, and here is one of the key moves of the game. Because now, even though white is having a heyday with black and taking out a lot of pawns and getting ahead in pawns, black has this deadly checkmate square right there. One more move, if he can get this cotton picking rook off this bottom file, white is in trouble. Watch how black does this. It's really interesting because rook took that, the rook comes up, now the rook will take another pawn, and the pawns are just wiped out. Yes, white is up several pawns, however, black has a way, brings the rook up to g6, right? Now rook comes up to d1, and watch what happens. Rook to d8. And you go, huh? Why on earth would he put the rook at d8? Really? Yeah, really. Because look, this is a tactic that's called a deflection. He's trying to deflect the defender, right? Because if white does take the rook, then the rook has checkmate. So it's okay for him to put that rook directly in danger. And in fact, what happens is, because white came out here and he put the rook there and he knows he can't take him, black has put himself in a really powerful position, and it's white who's going to have the inferior position in this endgame because of the incredible cooperation of a bishop and a rook. And yet white has been the one on the attack. And he's definitely up with pawns. In an endgame, white could win it, although these two aren't connected, and these two are all the way over here. And of course the black pawns are way separated, so it'd be a rough endgame, right? It'd be kind of tough. So white dodges over to e1 instead. So black knows, aha, I've got him where I want him. I want to get that rook off of that back rank if I can at all help it. So bring his bishop down. The checkmate option is still there, and threaten the rook. So the rook says, no, I've got to stay put on my home rank. I've got to guard my king. So I'm just going to bump over right there. And now black takes charge of the 7th rank. Fantastic power. Look at how he plays this. The coordination of the rooks and the bishops are beautiful. And white's a piece down, so he's got to play this real careful. So rook comes to b4 here, and the bishop bumps back up here to d4. He's going to stay on this diagonal no matter what, because there's the home square. That's the square he wants without question. And then rook comes to b1, because by bringing up the bishop here, he can't exchange a bishop, of course. He'll just lose the exchange. You don't want to do that. But the bishop is threatening to take a bishop or a pawn also. So he brings the rook over to here, staying on this rank, but protecting that pawn. And now he threatens the rook. And the rook says, well, I can block that pawn. And now he says rook goes to c6. Notice how black has not doubled up his pawns on a single file. Because of the possibility of a back rank checkmate, if he has a file here and one file over, he can put a rook down here and checkmate the king if he can get this guy off of this file, right? This is the only thing saving white's bacon right now. So rook takes a5, may as well, and the c rook comes down here to the 7th rank. And now we're getting to some very tight pressure, because we have the bishop hitting this, and we have the 2 rooks hitting this. White's days are coming to a close. So the rook says, okay, naturally I can go check, and the king bumps up to here. And at this point, white resigned, because he saw the end of the game has arrived, I can't win. Because he can't bring his other rook into an offensive against the black king. He has to guard that base. But look, I ran this through. If he goes if he goes to rook g1, then bishop is going to take g1. And then king takes g1, and of course the rook drops down and goes checkmate. But if the king doesn't take g1, and if instead rook comes to d6, then rook is going to take d6. Then he's going to bump up h4. Then he's going to come to bishop e3. Then he's going to come to a4. And then he's going to come to rook d1 mate. So either way, because of the cooperation and coordination of the bishop and the rooks, he withstood a really good attack by white, keeping that bishop all that time up here on that square that had no influence whatsoever, and yet it had the greatest influence in the end of the game. That's a nice tactic just to have in our patterns that we're trying to put in our brains. So there's your chess video. I hope you enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun playing through this game a few times. That was quite a game. I've got a lot more games in line, and I also have some more tactical positions that I want to share with you to improve our tactics. I've got a lot of them coming up too. So anyway, in the meantime, remember, be good, do well, have fun. Thanks again, and don't stay up late, but share all of your happiness that you can for people, because it is the Christmas season. What we're going to hope for is that we can carry off that happiness throughout the rest of the year. So anyway, happy chessercising and happy checkmating, and I will see you in the next video.